Good evening from New York. I'm Selwyn Collins, your host of CWS Journeys. Welcome to another edition of CWS Journeys. Our guest this evening is Simone Bowie Jones, who's an attorney at law and partner at Myers, Fletcher and Gordon. She is a member of the firm's commercial department, where her practice areas include banking, financial regulation, securities, corporate finance, product registration, sports and entertainment law, alternative dispute resolution, and most significantly, takeovers and mergers. Simone was actively involved in three of the major mergers and or acquisitions that occurred in Jamaica in recent years, namely the acquisition of Air Jamaica by Caribbean Airlines, the acquisition of La Salle de Mercado and Company Limited by Angostura Limited, and the merger of Tortuga franchises throughout the Caribbean into one entity in which Jamaica Producers Group acquired a majority interest. Let me just bring on Simone and introduce her to you. Simone Bowie Jones, good evening and welcome to CWS Journeys.
Hi, Selwyn, and thank you for having me.
Simone, congratulations to all Jamaican on Usain Bolt's performance at the Rio Olympics. I know, he's always expected to win, and we know this. Yet people are always glued to their screen or however they're viewing him, waiting for him to run. Why do you think this is so?
Well, for one, I think he's one of the most revered and loved athletes that the world has ever seen. And certainly within Jamaica, everybody's a fan. And even though he's done it before, there's no guarantee that he would have been able to do it again. So we all had our fingers crossed, hoping for the best.
But congratulations again.
Thank you. I'm happy to say thanks on behalf of the entire country.
Let me just get right into it. What do you agree with when those close to you describe this woman we've come to know as Simone Jones?
Could you read it?
What do you agree with when those close to you describe you? Yes.
What do I agree with? I would say if they described me as being independent, thoughtful, considerate, determined, and I guess loving, then I would say I would agree with that.
I say, if you were not an attorney, what other profession would you like to have tried?
Well, that's interesting because sometimes I ask myself that when I'm very, very stressed at work, what else is there that I could have been doing? I actually think there was a possibility at a time that I could have been an entrepreneur of sorts. I remember when I was in prep school at maybe age, 8, I had my first business, which was a book rental company. And I got together with 2 or 3 others, and we rented to the others the series of books that we had. And we actually did quite well. I think I entered high school feeling like I already had money to my name. So I don't know, somewhere along the lines though, I think that studying law and the focus of law kind of affected my entrepreneurial spirit in that way. But I would love to find a concept that I believe in, a product that I could put out there, because I do think I could bring a lot to, whether it's manufacturing, giving the public something that they need, marketing in a way, and being responsible for getting that end product out there. So I think if I wasn't an attorney, I would be operating my own business.
You mentioned when you were young, you were born in Jamaica.
Yes.
Could you give us a glimpse of your life at ages 9 and 15?
Well, okay. At age 9, I was born in Kingston. I've lived in the same house for basically until I was just about married. So I lived in St. Andrew. My father, both my parents are from Jamaica, my mother from Montego Bay, and my father not far from Kingston. And I grew up with one sister. I went to St. Andrew Prep, and I would say that at age 9, in retrospect, I was a highly confident child, because looking back at my photos, I would not have described myself as an attractive child. I had buff teeth with a big gap in the middle. I was perhaps slightly chubby at times, but my parents seem to have had no impact whatsoever on my concept of myself. I was one of those children that people always spoke about in terms of, if I had a complaint at school, it wasn't what I did, it was how I said it. I had no problem expressing myself, and I really enjoyed that time in life. I think that St. Andrew Prep was a wonderful school where you interacted with a wide cross section of people, and which really nurtured your personality and allowed you to grow as an individual. So at 9, I think I thought I was very much so better at a lot of things than I actually was. Um, just with this all of this confidence, and I'm not sure where it came from.
Only one sibling, you said, one sister,
Yes.
and you had this amazing confidence. Do you see do you see how that played a role in the profession that you or the career you're in today?
Well, definitely.
Mm.
It's very important to be able to present yourself as confident and to have conviction behind what you're saying. They have a saying sometimes that, sometimes with law, even if you're wrong, you need to be wrong and strong. Because even if you can convince someone that you are right just by the delivery. But that's more in terms of making the arguments as opposed to whether I guess they legitimately accord with the law. So it definitely has a lot to do with this profession and is definitely a useful trait to have.
Yeah.
Not me, not, and that doesn't mean that there aren't times that I question myself or if I automatically believe that I'm right or better at things than others. But it definitely is a good characteristic to have in the field of
Mhm.
law.
Your parents, if you were to, well, what is your favorite memory of um, your parents?
My favorite, that will probably have to be, I think it would be any one of a number of Christmases I could choose from.
Uh-huh.
Just because Christmas is a time that definitely meant a lot to my mother. So she would have been the type of parent that would have dressed my sister and I in matching nightgowns. She would have told us we didn't quite believe in well, we believed in Santa Claus to an extent because what she told us is that Santa Claus was more like the spirit of Christmas. So she was in a sense helping him. So we still would wait up in the night and we could hear her, putting things under the tree, but the stories didn't seem inconsistent to us. Um, and I remember very clearly, the joy she got in terms of the preparation of Christmas dinner, the giving of the gifts, the making the day something special and meaningful to us. Every Christmas, I think, during that time, that age, those are definitely some of my fondest memories.
Is your grandmother you're still alive? Was she alive when you were growing up?
She was alive when I was growing up, but she lived in Montego Bay and we lived in Kingston. She's no longer here, and she actually was the only grandparent that I knew. I knew my step grandmother on my father's side, and she actually lived in New York.
Oh,
Yes,
so tell us about some of the women some women who have made a great impact on you as a child.
as a child.
Hmm.
But of course, my mother is going to be the first and perhaps the most predominant figure that had an impact on me. My mother is the example of what it is to be a hardworking person and to basically be self-made. She grew up in Montego Bay, one of several siblings, and they were all, I guess, call it a working class family.
Hmm.
She put herself basically, she won a scholarship from high school to college in the States. She went to a university called St. Bonaventure University, where she worked in the canteen as a part of a way to generate money to supplement, the funds that she needed while at school. And I'll give you an interesting side story about her. When she came back to Jamaica, she taught for a while and then she began working at the Ministry of Education and she worked as a civil servant from what would have been akin to an entry level position to being the permanent secretary, which, other than being the minister, is the highest position that you could have. And I watched my mother be there for me, support me, while simultaneously maintaining her career. And she demonstrated to me that it is possible to balance both work life and family life. And everything that I have done, I've held her to be my standard. And if she is proud of me, then I know that I've accomplished that.
Are you able to strike that balance? You are indeed a partner at a major law firm. Are you able to strike that balance between work life and home life?
Well, in some ways, I'm relatively new to the balance because I have one son and he is 15 months old.
Oh,
So I am in the process of trying to strike that balance, and it definitely is quite challenging. I think as a professional mother, you always feel that you're not doing enough in any given area at any particular time because you are always being pulled in a number of directions. But I also have a very supportive husband, and I think we're just trying to feel our way through this maze and make sure that we can both strike the right balance.
that's awesome. Is there a particular experience from your parents that shapes who you are today?
A particular experience from my parents. Um, I would be, and I'm just getting some interference because I actually just realized that my monitor for the baby room is on, so it's
Oh,
turning.
okay, that's all right.
So
That's all right.
that you don't get that noise. Well, I'm not sure if this qualifies as a particular, and you want specifically from childhood?
Um, uh, yes.
From my childhood.
Well, actually, you did
Well, actually,
describe.
I have a good one actually from my childhood.
Uh huh.
I remember um, when I was in prep school, I had a friend who used to have these wonderful birthday parties, very creative. They weren't like typical crafts. And I told my mother that I was sick, I think, on the Friday and that I could not go to school. But I don't think I wasn't actually sick. So I never went to school on the Friday. And then on the Saturday, I woke up all excited about the facts. Or no, I think the Friday evening, I came to her talking about the fact that, I wanted to go to this birthday party the next day. And she basically, said, no, if you are too sick to go to school, then you're clearly too sick to go to this party. And I remember I was begging her and I literally dropped down on my knees and I was begging her about, I really want to go and so forth. And she said to me very sternly that the only one you go to your knees for is God. And she let me know very clearly that this is why you tell the truth. You tell the truth all the time because lying never works for you. And you must think about things in advance. So it was actually, I learned a lot of lessons in that one day.
Yes.
Over a small incident, and it has always stayed with me. Whatever you're doing, you need to not think about what you want in the moment. You need to think ahead. So don't make a silly decision today for something that's really going to impact on you tomorrow. I don't think she really realized at the time that I would have gained all of that from that experience.
Have you ever told her this?
Actually, probably not.
First time, huh?
I think I probably haven't told her, so I probably need to let her know.
Graduated from the University of the West Indies and completed your studies at the Norman Manley Law School. You're an attorney at law and partner at Myers, Fletcher and Gordon. What do you
Yes.
remember about your first case and the impact it had on you?
Well, I started off in the commercial department. So I am a commercial attorney. And at our firm, we have three departments: property, commercial, and litigation. So when you use the word case, for me, it would have been more of a corporate transaction.
Mm.
And what I do remember is feeling a lot like I'd been thrown into the fire. I was assigned to an attorney that was, he was very much so a rainmaker, and he did not spend a lot of time in the office. He got there very early, so you had to if you wanted to talk to him, you needed to basically be in the office by around 5:45 because he could be gone by 7:30. So I remember the first matter or series of matters that I did in the beginning, just basically feeling very stressed about it, whether I was getting the concepts, whether I was, on top of it, and whether I was doing it, in the right way and to his satisfaction. Um, so again, it comes back to a feeling of confidence because you can't afford to be too confident in terms of believing that you know everything and that you don't need the support. But again, you have to have the confidence in believing in yourself that you can tackle it. And it was definitely a good baptism, a baptism by fire. But it has reminded me that you always have to approach things and different matters with the same attitude and perspective.
Talking about baptism, let me go along the same line of metaphor. This particular priest that you were assigned to, how 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 has he impacted you? How how much of well, yes, how has he impacted you?
This particular,
Attorney that you were assigned to when you first started.
well, he impacted me from the point of view of demonstrating what it is that you need to do in the context of building relationships with clients.
Ah,
Because, like I said, he was a very good rainmaker. And in order to be a good rainmaker, he made himself extremely accessible to clients. So if a client wanted to meet him, he was not asking the client to come down to our office, which is at downtown. He's going to go to them. If they wanted to have breakfast, he would meet them and have breakfast anywhere. It could be at their house or it could be at a hotel. He showed me that it's important to make your clients, particularly local clients, because our firm does a lot of work for persons in Jamaica as well as overseas investors. So particularly when you're dealing with local clients, you want them to feel that you're more than their attorney, that you're their confidant. So he definitely was a good example of that.
when did you become a partner?
I actually became a partner at the beginning of 2015.
2015.
Yes.
How has been the ride so far?
But it's been interesting because um, one of the things that was a pleasant surprise about the time at which I became partner was that I was actually pregnant at the time. And it made me feel very proud and um, happy with my firm. The fact that they were not daunted by the concept that they were making me a partner at a time when I would not necessarily be able to contribute the same level of work or time for the simple concept of that I was going to be out on maternity leave. So I started off partnership with the real threat of, well, this now more than ever is where I will have to rise to the occasion in terms of balancing my responsibilities of work life and family life.
And you have managed so far.
So far, so good. So far, so good.
So I'm just curious. How do you use this influence to empower other young attorneys or other young female attorneys at that law firm?
Well, I try to be as accessible as possible.
Uh-huh.
Again, being one of the younger partners, I think I am the youngest partner. I think the partnership looks towards me a lot to kind of get a feel of, what's happening with the associates, with and when I say the associates, male and female. So I try to interact a lot, continue to interact a lot with them to try and get a good sense from them about concerns that they may have. And I try to tell them about what my experience has been, give them as much knowledge, guide them, give them examples, tips, and just based on my own experience. Because very often, sometimes, whether it's based on age or based on gender, you know, people might feel like there are other opportunities that are not as accessible to them. Or the number one thing they want to know is, what do I need to know differently? Or what's going to help me get from point A to point B? Mm-hmm. So I try to engage in a lot of those conversations to motivate and to guide where it is that I can.
You mentioned gender, and something attracted my attention when I went on the website. I noticed that I don't know if it's current information, but what I noticed, there seems to be more female partners than male partners, and
Yes.
I found that particularly curious, especially in a male-dominated environment, traditionally male-dominated environment. But what do you think this says about Myers Fletcher and Gordon when it comes to gender equality?
Well, it's actually not necessarily saying something about Myers Fletcher and Gordon. It's saying something about Jamaica. Mm. I think there was a survey that came out sometime this year ranking countries by the number of female managers that they have. And if Jamaica was not number one, I think we may have been number one in the world, or if not number one, in the top three. the simple fact that there are more female attorneys than male is actually reflecting something that's happening across the board in most professional industries.
Hmm.
I think you will find fields such as engineering, for example, to still perhaps be male dominated. But in general, we have a lot of high level corporate women. If you look at some will say, of course, that yes, there is still a very much so a glass ceiling, as in you have a lot of women in management, but not necessarily the same number of females CEOs. But if you even look at the makeup of our law schools, I think there might be a slight change in the demographic now because they've changed the admission requirements and they've increased the numbers. But when I was in law school, the ratio would have been something like in my class, maybe, for example, 70 women to 10 men. And so what you're seeing playing out on our website is something that's affecting the wider country as a whole.
Gotcha. I gotcha. That's good. That's good. I mean, in so many ways, that's very good. Um, what would you like your position and professional accomplishment to say to young girls looking at you for guidance?
Well, I think what it is that it's a good example of the fact that you can progress in this profession and you can do make it all the way to the top and you can seek to balance that with having a happy personal life and a healthy family life.
Mhm.
I think that for women, as distinct from men, there tends to come a point in a life where you feel as though you need to choose between the things that are most important to you because there is a feeling again that you can't do it all. And I'm not sure that in all circumstances you can do it all, but there are ways that you can structure your life to do the best that you can and try to gain or attain all the things it is that you want. So I think it is an example of somebody who is relatively young, who has been working at it and will continue to do so. And it demonstrates that there are a number of things that are attainable.
Take this 9-year-old girl who had this bookstore selling books. Now she is an attorney at law and partner to this law firm. Um, why law, Simone? When did you first realize that you want to become a lawyer?
Well, it's funny because I was one of those people that people always told me I should be a lawyer. I think it was because I was always a child that had an answer for everything. So it was being put to me. Um, Everybody used to say, you know, when they would ask you for what's the goal that you have in mind or the profession that you have in mind, law was a very popular response. So at one point, when I was again in prep school, I didn't want to say that because that's what everybody was saying. So I was asking about professions, and then I heard about, being an actuary, and I was like, I researched it a little, and I realized there were only like two actuaries in Jamaica. They do very well, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna say I want to be an actuary. But then when I started to realize exactly how much math was involved in being an actuary and what it really entailed. I realized that that was not really practical for me because that was never my strong point. So I think in assessing my options, it just came to me as something that I thought I would be good at. I should add to that my father, he at one point had aspired to be an attorney. And before the law school was even established here, what used to happen is that if you wanted to be an attorney, you either became articled via the UK or you were an articled clerk with an attorney, basically acting as almost like an apprentice to an existing attorney here. So my father was actually one of the first of a number of Black Jamaicans that would have gone over, and I hope I'm not getting the history, incorrectly, but would have gone over to London in pursuit of qualifying as an attorney. But something happened and he failed an exam and he actually didn't qualify because he didn't retake it. And the friends that he went with, two in particular, they went on to become attorneys. So I think also I would have been exposed at some points to other practicing attorneys as I was growing up.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just more of a gradual progression to realizing that this is what I wanted to do. And then as I approached A levels or during the time that I was taking A levels, I basically said to myself that I have to get serious because at that point in time, the law school used to only accept maybe 20 or 25, maximum 30 graduates straight from high school. So you had to do very well. And at that point, I said, okay, well, I need to give it all or nothing because this is what I see for myself.
Bringing a fresh perspective to legal services, in what ways are you doing that?
Well, I work at a very established firm, and we are the largest firm in the English speaking Caribbean. We have a lot of, as I said, overseas clients, but we try very hard to be ahead of the game. We don't try to look at ourselves comparatively to other local firms within Jamaica. We try and look at what world leading institutions are doing. So, in bringing a fresh perspective, it's about trying to attain those standards, operate at a first world standard, and at the same time be able to make us approachable and accessible to young professionals and professionals as a whole, business people in Jamaica. And how that is difficult and how I'm trying to change the approach is to simultaneously bridge that gap. So it's about finding ways to explain to people who are involved in lucrative, but perhaps not as formal industries. So Jamaica is well known. We're well known for our music. We're well known for our athletics. But very often that you'll find that people involved in those industries, they might not get as much legal guidance as they need or enter into the kind of formal arrangements that they really need to protect their interests. It's about bringing a perspective of making a firm like mine accessible to them and within their reach. And at the same time, being able to say to the investor who's coming from France or coming from England, from a large company, that we too can offer you with the same level of service that you're accustomed to. So it's about giving top quality service, but in a way where we allow everyone to appreciate that we are within your reach.
One more question and then we take a quick break. What is the worst career advice someone has ever given to you?
The worst career advice. I would say I was advised, I was told that very often making presentations, it can be a waste of time. Meaning you spend a lot of time otherwise with using a billable hours working on these presentations. You go into a presentation to, general members of the public, and the odds of that being converted into actual billable work is so slim. Very often it's a waste of time. So don't stress yourself out about doing that. I realized, perhaps the hard way, that that actually was not good advice, because as a young person, it's important that you do what you can to bring your own clientele as an attorney. And one of the best ways to do that is to put your face out there by whatever means, available to you. And by working on presentations, you actually familiarize yourself with the core material. It helps you with your memory. It helps you in terms of applying it when the actual work comes along. And you do actually get the opportunity to interact with people. And even if they're not in a position to be your client today, they could be your client tomorrow. And maybe some amount of information that you've imparted to them would be very useful. So it took me a while to shift away from that advice and to appreciate the fact that actually I think there's a lot to be gained in it. And one of the things now in terms of my professional approach is that I say, instead of, and one piece of advice that I would give anyone is always be open to saying yes. At this point in time, I pretty much say yes to everything, unless it is that I can see the basic and inherent danger in what I'm being asked to do. Anyone who asks me to speak or do an interview such as the one I'm doing right now, I say yes, because
like that.
you have no idea the doors that you can open to yourself. So it's better to say yes than to be too concerned or cautious and go with the no.
Let's take a break.